Since the very first UFC tournaments, when fights were almost without rules and kicks in the balls were not just normal, but in some cases very useful, a lot of water has flowed under the bridge. These fights without rules have become a sport with a whole bunch of rules and restrictions, judges and commissions that are responsible for their observance, which has begun to interfere the expression of really hot guys. And today we'll devote enough time to them and remember these most notorious offenders and their dirty moves, as well as fights that got out of the referee's control and turned from category of sports into an ordinary street fight. But before starting, be sure to go through the quiz. Who in this situation acted dirty in your opinion? Yoshihiro Nakao, who decided to kiss Heath Herring for luck before the fight, or Herring himself, who instantly executed the Japanese for these homo jokes? I'm waiting for your answers in the comments. Let's start with the guy who inspired me for this release, Dutch puncher Gilbert Yvel, nicknamed Hurricane, who could sometimes succumb to instincts in a battle so that the referees became not an authority for him, but an obstacle that could be eliminated and knocked out. In 1998, 21-year-old Ivel went to cold Moscow to compete in the European Ultimate Fighting Championship. It was a rating super fight, and Dutchman's opponent was a fighter from Dagestan, Karimullah Bakalayev. Karimullah in the first seconds took Ivel down, where Gilbert always felt inferior and very complex. Bakalayev dominated completely, and if he let Ivel go off in the standing position, it was only in order to carry out another takedown and show the comfort of Dagestan Airlines in all its glory. But Hurricane was nicknamed the Hurricane for a reason. He only had one exchange and a left hook to drop Bakalayev, and then, purely according to yard rules, stomped the fallen one, jumping on him with 2 feet. The fight was stopped, but the situation got out of control a little, and the referee turned out to be the last one who got a slap on the face from Volk Han, who jumped into the cage. Apparently, he charged the referee for violations from Ivel, which he ignored. As I got it, sockers and in general any kicks on a lying opponent were prohibited, but Gilbert always fought according to his street rules and allowed any action that could cause damage and bring him victory. Hurricane lost the fight by disqualification, and initially it was because of prohibited kicks, but then it turned out that on the ground he tried to bite Bakalayev a little bit. In Sherdog they changed the disqualification to losing for bites. So according to street rules, Ivel won but lost in a sports duel, and he even exceeded his standard plan for violations. However, after the fight he knelt down and apologized to Karimullah. Couple of years later, Hurricane drifted into Pride, where he knew all the rage of Wanderlei Silva by doing it with his balls, after which he couldn't even continue the fight. At the Pride 16 tournament, he has run into brick wall after the defeat of Chelchen. Ivel went out to the Predator Don Fry, who had previously smashed UFC by winning a couple of knockout tournaments, and came to Pride with a record of 11-1. The only one who could beat Fry at that time was Mark Coleman. There is always a Schwarzenegger for every Predator.
He would definitely want to face Coleman. Gilbert jumping up and going. Don Fry gets the takedown. But Gilbert...
A flying knee from Ivel and a scuffle at the ropes, in which Hurricane turns on his street mode and begins to break the rules. In addition to harmless rope grabbing, Gilbert decided to play for high stakes and wanted to turn off Fry's light, but not in the classical meaning of the word to knock out, but simply gouge out his eyes. Creative but disgusting. So he got his deserved yellow and anti-respect of the Japanese public, after which the fight continued. The second yellow one didn't keep itself waiting long. Hurricane again began to grab the ropes, preventing Fry from taking himself down and hammering his head into the canvas. The Predator still managed to teleport Gilbert down and honestly break him. Every blow of the Predator was greeted by the Japanese fans, who watched this execution with delight.
Yeah, you should cross-face him.
Ivel tries to stop the Predator with his knee in the head, but even while standing, he doesn't forget about his original plan, about light and eyes, constantly jabbing his thumbs into Fry's face. So these constant violations forced the referee to intervene and stop the fight, since Gilbert had already quite worked out his disqualification. But this decision of the Japanese made Ivel very angry, and he wanted to continue the fight, and not necessarily according to the rules.
We can do it again. We can do it again.
Gone Fry.
Predator also didn't mind the scuffle once more, and calmed the heated Hurricane by promising a rematch, but this meeting never took place. Gilbert fought another fight in Pride, beating Jeremy Horn by decision, and left the Japanese promotion. So as a result, during his career Hurricane was already defeated by disqualification 3 times, which is one of the highest efficiency rates in this regard. So you can't immediately remember the fighters who could have surpassed him in this. Well, if anyone remembers such, write the name of the hero in the comments, but the second part it will definitely come in handy. Another epic hero of the 90s, the fearless and incorrigible swashbuckler Bob Schrijber, who was nicknamed Dirty Bob for a reason. In September 1999, Bob went to Pride and fought the Japanese Daiya Matsui, and in this fight an eclipse occurred with him, which showed Bob not from his best side. The Japanese in this fight mockingly transferred Schreiber to the ground and went to various submission moves, including Bob's favorite leg locks.
At the famous bulldog. What did he do?
So apparently, Schreiber was so frustrated with this, so he didn't find anything smarter than to chop Matsui on the sly during the stop of the battle. The Japanese responds to Bob with a double and then completely throws him overboard so that during the flight he has time to think about his behavior. Matsui gave full freedom to his fantasies and went into fury. At first he tirelessly trampled Bob with stomps and then completely lost control over himself, and according to Usman's testament, pressed poor Schreiber to the ropes and decided to increase his foot size.
Schreiber grabbing the ropes. Schreiber going in at
Bob could have forgiven everything to Matsui, but not to do it with legs. That's why the axe kick in the back of the head after the gong went with no remorse, which wasn't appreciated by the local audience very much. For this sneaky blow, Bob received a disqualification. Even if it wasn't that, he would still have lost the fight by decision. But the main bad boy of the K1 fight was undoubtedly Badr Hari, a Moroccan puncher who didn't always know how to restrain himself, and sometimes his handbrake was torn off. In 2006, Hari took a fight with Peter Graham right at a press conference. At first Badr didn't shake hands with the Australian, but after the conference itself he came up and kissed his future opponent, followed by a blow and takedown from Graham. But Peter responded even more effectively to this Hari's disrespect. He broke Badr's jaw with a blow, which I really don't know what is the correct name, so whoever knows, write the name in the comments. The next eclipse of Hari took place in 2008, when Moroccan reached the final of the World Grand Prix, where he had to fight with Remy Bonyaski, who had already beat Hari by majority decision and also became the world champion twice. Badr constantly threw punches and hit well with a jab, but it was Bonyaski who was able to knock down his opponent first, bringing his left hook to the target. This was the only thing that the two-time K1 champion couldn't bring to his credit, otherwise everything was in the hands of Moroccan, who couldn't hold them back even after the bell from the break. In the second round, Hari's hot blood drove him forward, and he wasn't thinking that the title and the champion's belt were at stake. He wanted to inflict damage on Bonyaski, and after a long exchange in a standing position, he decided to finish off a rival on the ground. I don't know if Bonyaski faked and played great, or if this shot really shook him so much, but the fight was stopped and Hari was awarded with a disqualification, and Remy became the K1 Grand Prix champion for the third time in his career. Such cases of anti-respect from Hari were not the only ones. In the battle with Husdi Gerges, the Moroccan also turned on his uncontrollable mode. He wanted to fight to death with Husdi on a press conference, but the situation was resolved without fists. But in the battle itself, Hari wanted a knockout as never before. He immediately flew to the opponent and carried out a long-lasting combo without any reconnaissance. Badr confidently beat Gerges the entire first round, and the question was when the knockout would be. But Hari had his own plans. He succumbed to anger, and instead of winning the fight according to the rules, he kicked Gerges after a knockdown and received a well-deserved disqualification for this violation. So Badr lost the title of its Showtime champion, and it seems Gerges was happy with this outcome, since during the battle he had not so many chances, and the situation reminds me of something. I would like to end this with a case that happened not even in MMA but in boxing, but that's so scumbag that's difficult to pass by and not include this character into a collection. The name of this hero is James Butler, nicknamed Harlem Hammer, who in 2001 got together with Richard Grant in a charity boxing match, and all the money raised from the tickets was supposed to go to help the victims of the terrorist attacks on September 11. In this meeting, Grant worked well at long distance and tortured the Hammer with his jab, while James the whole fight couldn't catch up with and hit the nimble opponent, from which he began to wind up. Richard on the Courage mocked him in the style of Roy Jones and was taking the rounds just one after another. He took the fight by decision and made an upset, while beating Butler already second time.
Wild upset, a unanimous decision victory.
Oh,
against
look at this.
Butler.
Whoa!
Butler just ran across the ring.
Butler just went over there and sucker punched and knocked out.
After the announcement of the results, Grant came up to shake hands with the opponent, who by that moment had already taken off his gloves and with a rat-like short side punch switched off Grant's light. After this blow, Richard's jaw was broken, his tongue was bitten and his teeth were knocked out. Hammer got a criminal record and served 4 months in prison. But this act didn't end the story of Harlem Hammer. After some time, he killed his old friend, journalist Sam Kellerman, brother of the famous boxing commentator Max Kellerman. James struck about 30 times with a hammer to Sam's head and then set the house on fire to hide the evidence. The reason was that Sam tried to drive the hammer out of his house, as he sheltered him for a while when the boxer had difficulties with accommodation. But to this kindness got the following response. After some time, Butler confessed to what he had done and received 29 years in prison. On this sad note, we will end today's review. Which of the cases above do you consider the dirtiest and most frostbitten? Write in the comments. Also, who remembers such battles, write their messages, and it will be nice to make a continuation of this section. If you liked the video, push the like button, subscribe, and press the bell to stay in touch and not to miss fresh videos.